Thank you, Brett Ridgway, Chief Business Officer. Item 5 of 7. This one is good though, exciting. I like this. This is fun work, right? This is always good things when we build new buildings and expand buildings and do capital projects. So it's fun for me to present this to you all. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of legal stuff that we have here for your review. We're not going to go through it all because that would take hours on end. And then again at the special meeting, asking you to approve a resolution related to this.
Well, I think Kevin Butcher wants to stay at least 2 or 3 more hours.
So the first thing I'm going to show is the timeline. So what we are doing here again is establishing the financing for the project, the school project, which Pedro Almeida shared with you all at the last board meeting that we want to do, MS 223-226, the new middle school, and the expansion of Bennett Ranch Elementary School. Financing arrangements like this have to happen in a very tight, compressed timeline because this has to be real-time data as much as possible in order for the market, and I do mean Wall Street, to be interested in helping us with this financing arrangement. Because in the end, what we're doing is presenting them with an opportunity to invest $85 million with us to help us build these buildings. And so this is the timeline that we have established with our team. Our team includes Bond COP Elections Council of Butler Snow. We have our underwriters, RBC Capital Markets. We have, of course, our own business office team here. We have our trustee of Zion's Bank. So it's a big team of players that do this well and often. So, but I want to go through with you what we're doing and why we're doing it as well, and what's really interesting, unique about it. So COPs, Certificates of Participation, is the method that we utilize, unique from most districts, to finance capital projects. Most districts will use bonds, bond indebtedness, and we'll talk about the differences of those here in a second. First is this background page of the history of what we have done before. It goes all the way back to 2005 when we did our first mill levy override and issued our first COPs, and that was a time that we did that more out of necessity more than strategy, because each school district has a limit to bond capacity of what they can issue for debt instruments, and that was not fitting well with the growth that we were experiencing back then. It still doesn't even fit well with the growth that we have now, and so that's why we've kind of abandoned it altogether, the traditional path of bonded indebtedness. Again, so we established that in 2005, and then 2014, 16, and 18, we had a series of elections with our community, which kind of morphed the mill levy override into the process that we have now. The first step there in 2014 was asking the community to maintain the rate, which is 9.8 mils, but allowing us to start using some of those revenues collected for operational purposes instead of just payment of COPs. And that was the clear intent in the original election. So we had to ask for that permission to do that. In 2016, we, as some of our earlier bonds were going to be starting to expire, we basically asked permission to say, hey, when you consider bond and MLO together, let's keep that rate pretty close to the same, but allow us to change bond levy into mill levy override as we could, so that then we could also collateralize those new mill levy collections to issue new COPs to do new projects, which were Bennett Ranch Elementary and Inspiration View Elementary, expanding all the 3 high schools, doing the refresh and refurbish, etc. So that was really good. 2018, what we were left then with, and after 2016, was two mill levy overrides. And in 2018, we asked to consolidate those into a single mill levy override, because the 2 that we had, one was a fixed dollar cap of $7.5 million. The other one was a fixed rate cap. And so we were going to, at some point, run into not conflict, but just run into a point where that we weren't going to continue to grow with the community on the fixed dollar cap side. So we said, hey, our rate, our bind rate right now is 19.736. Can we drop it to 18.5 and convert the fixed dollar cap to a fixed rate cap as part of this, so that we can just continue to grow with the community? And so that won approval as well.
But that was
also there was a sunset of one of them.
The sunset actually, I believe, got removed in the 2014 election.
Okay.
But yeah, there was a sunset originally, and so when we started using it for operational purposes, that was when we asked for it to remove the sunset clause as well.
Gotcha, thank you.
So that's a little bit of the background on what we did when. The background on why COPs versus bonds. Again, for us, it's become a much more viable, strategically useful path than bonded indebtedness because, just like as I indicate here, this is the difference between a home equity loan and a mortgage. It's simple. You can do more with a home equity loan than a mortgage. There's a lot more involved in a mortgage. And so we look for that flexibility, and we are able to use things better, utilize the monies better. What we have technically in this is a lease purchase agreement. COPs are not debt instruments. They are revenue instruments. The investor is not agreeing to have a debt repaid to them. The investor is agreeing to share in a piece of future revenue collections. That's what they are participating in, is revenue collections. And what this allows us to do in that middle section, I think, is really important. It allows us to approach our capital situations from a what can we afford question first, then what can we do with that we can afford, versus what we need, and then trying to figure out how to pay for it. Of the traditional style with bonds. So I think that resonates better with our community so that they know we are working within our parameters of what we can afford, rather than asking them to come up with funding for something that we dream up. And overall, COPs are a very normalized investment now for the municipal markets. And so it doesn't cost us any more money significantly to do COPs versus bonds. This next slide talks about, these next series of slides will talk about how are we able to do this, grow with the community. What does that mean? This is a chart of how we spend our mills. So this is not about dollars, this is about mills. 18.5 mills is what we collect every year now. What do we spend those things on? The bottom area there is the operational spend, which equates to 4.5 mills per year. And each year that generates a different amount of money based on the assessed value total that we are applying those 4.5 mills to. Then the colors above there, we have the refresh and refurbish. We have our original finance instruments that we refinanced, and then we have our 2016 3B there in the yellow on the top. And what you can see, what happens here is because those are all fixed dollar payments, as our assessed value grows, our number of mills required to satisfy those payments shrinks over time. And when we connect to these over time, that becomes the strip of funding that you've heard me refer to in the past. So our refresh and refurbish, which was $20 million that we did back in 2016, and we're repaying that $2.5 million a year. In 2018, that cost us 3 mills worth of money, but in 2020, that only cost us 2.4 mills worth of money. And if we go into our current situation, you see that's only costing us 2 mills worth of money. So as we grow, and our number of mills needed to satisfy those current obligations compresses, that creates new opportunities at the top of the pyramid, the top of the column there, to say what can we do next? Again, growing with our community. This 2022 scenario is what we're currently entering into, where at the very bottom you'd see our assessed value going from $1.049 billion of assessed value to $1.234 billion of assessed value. That's why we are able to spend less in terms of mill collections to satisfy those current obligations, and allows the opportunity of $4.7 million to say, let's do something else. Let's then collateralize that strip of revenue going forward.
Can you explain how the repeal of Gallagher affects this? Or does it not affect it?
The repeal of Gallagher does have an impact to this in terms of how the assessed value grows. Because in the past, before the repeal, the residential assessment rate would be reset all the time meaning every other year, so that we maintained this balance of non-residential cumulative assessed value in the state and residential cumulative assessed value in the state in this 60-40 ratio. And the way to maintain that 60-40 ratio between those two categories was to adjust the residential assessment rate. When Gallagher was repealed, basically the requirement to maintain that 60-40 ratio went away, and so the residential assessment rate no longer had to be adjusted. Now it's more of a decision of can it, should it, will it, do we want to adjust it?
It's more of a realistic valuation.
I wouldn't even call it that just yet. It stops the erosion. It stops it from getting more unrealistic
Okay.
Does it become realistic? No, I think there's correction the other direction that has to make it realistic.
Right, it just kind of freezes it at what it was
Yeah,
when
so
it
it
was
stopped
repealed.
the problem from getting worse. So
Okay.
on that topic, there's still more work to be done in saying, okay, how do we still repair some of that lost?
Gotcha, thank you.
So yeah, it is definitely, because that 1.234 billion could have been lower, would have been lower. I'm sorry, if Gallagher had not been repealed. So this is the 2022 scenario. As we move forward, if we continue to grow, new strips of funding will become available again for additional projects. So if we just assume some normal, historically comparable growth in assessed value over these coming years, we will see additional opportunities come forward. So in 2024, if we look a couple years from now, we could be looking at another elementary school opportunity if that's what our growth determines that we need. And that would only be driven by the growth in assessed value going from 1.2 billion then to 1.4 billion. And so on. We continue that out each of these years. Every other year, we would be able to do another elementary school if that's what the growth determines, meaning that we have those numbers of students and that's what we need. If we don't have those number of students, then the assessed value probably won't be there. If we do have those numbers of students, then the assessed value probably will be there that we can then collateralize it and build the school that we want to serve those students with. So that has been the design from the beginning, and this is how I can see it playing out exactly as we had hoped back in the day, that we would be able to satisfy our elementary and middle school facility needs with this process.
Those mills that you were talking about, the stack, that's up to 14 mills, and our mill levy overrides up to 18.5, so there
Correct.
is 4.5 being used for other things that were approved by voters.
How does new incoming charter schools affect this, or does it not?
The charter schools all share in the operational piece. They do not share in the capital piece. So they share in the 4.5 piece, but not the 14. And then the 4.5 piece, they are sharing that exactly at the same ratio as any operated school. We have a formula that divvies that out based on student count and how the student count is developed is created, meaning there's a portion that's based on resident students, because this is a locally generated resource, and so a majority of the money follows resident students, but there's still a piece that goes to total student count, which then would include the students that choice in from out of district.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but not every district does that.
Correct.
Okay, but that was passed by the voters. Okay, that's something that District 49 valued, is if we're going to pass this mill levy override and go into capital and whatnot, that charter schools are going to be part of that.
Yeah, so just like we were talking about in the budget presentation, they have the exact same PPR. In this case, they have the exact same opportunity to share in those operational overrides as well. So the rest of the presentation here, the particular presentation, has that same information in numbers, which of course is the part I prefer. But if you like graphs, you can look at the graph pages. If you like numbers, you can look at the number pages, but it really is demonstrating the same thing about how, as we grow, our community grows, our assessed value grows, we'll have additional opportunities to collateralize those revenue streams and continue to build